Hi, my name is Greg Hale. Currently, right now, we are in historic Gettysburg. Behind me, you see here, is one of the multiple monuments to the states that fought here during the Civil War. This specific monument is dedicated to the men who fought for the state of North Carolina. North Carolina actually proceeded to provide most of the men that fought in the Civil War in the Eastern Theater. Specifically, in this area that we are in now, all of this was in Lane's Brigade. What you see ahead of you on the opposite side of the ridge is Federal lines. You will see that there is a small copse of trees toward the center. That is the convergence point that people always talk about. To our immediate right, you see that it is all open field. However, it is not flat, as is often talked about or depicted in movies and documentaries. We also have to our right, we have the state of Tennessee, and further in the clearing beyond the wood line is the state of Virginia monument, which is also the monument dedicated to Robert E. Lee specifically. Behind us, this is actually the rear of the Confederate lines. You also have a monument off to our rear left is going to be a monument to the 11th Mississippi that helped support Lane's Brigade. And here we have a monument to the entire Army of Northern Virginia. The Army of Northern Virginia had 3 corps. The 1st Corps under James Longstreet, the 2nd Corps under Richard Ewell, and the 3rd Corps under A.P. Hill. It's not until 1864 where you see another 4th Corps being represented in the Army of Northern Virginia. Now, the campaign for Gettysburg did not begin on July 1st. It actually wasn't even the first battle that was fought here on July 1st. There was another battle that happened previously on June 26th, where Early's division of Richard Ewell's 2nd Corps proceeded to march through town, scattering the local militia, which was the Pennsylvania College Guard, now Gettysburg College. He went through town, made his way going eastward, and was stopped in the town of Wrightsville. Now, back to Gettysburg. The Gettysburg campaign began in June with the replacement of Army of the Potomac's commander, Joe Hooker. Joe Hooker is famous for his debacle at Chancellorsville, where Stonewall Jackson proceeded to roll up the Federal lines like a wet blanket. Hooker is replaced by George Gordon Meade, another Pennsylvanian. Now, it is important to know, during the Battle of Gettysburg, Longstreet had reservations to begin with from the start. He didn't want to fight here. However, Robert E. Lee had said, "It is crucial that we fight here. We must take the war to the northern enemy." Okay, so here we are in the north. Originally, Lee wanted to make his way to Harrisburg, which was a major railroad hub. But instead, a battle erupted outside of the town of Gettysburg. Confederate cavalry was nowhere to be seen. In fact, it was actually up above Gettysburg, going up toward Carlisle. The 3rd Corps under A.P. Hill encountered Buford's cavalry, John Buford, and they proceeded to fall. And here we are in front of the Virginia Monument. This monument in particular is dedicated to the fighting men of the state of Virginia, as well as the Confederacy as a whole. This monument was actually dedicated in 1917, when America joined the flames of war, also known as World War I. The statue itself stands 41 feet tall, with the granite base being 16 feet, and the general and his horse being 14 feet tall. Behind us also, you have 6 figures, as well as an officer on horseback. From left to right, you have a professional, a mechanic, an artist, a boy, a businessman, a farmer, and a youth. These are the type of people that made up the soldiers in the Army of Northern Virginia. You did not just have farmers and backcountry woodsmen. You would have had a menagerie of different people. You could have had dock workers from Louisiana, shopkeepers from Georgia, farmers from Tennessee. It was not just all these redneck style people. This monument was dedicated in June of 1917. We had only been at war for only 2 months. Robert E. Lee had been dead by now for a good 50 plus years. And this monument actually stands where Robert E. Lee was actually witnessing the calamity that was Pickett's Charge. Remember earlier how I was saying that the focus point was on a copse of trees right behind us? Well, here is where Robert E. Lee had a perfect view to watch the calamity that was. Each regiment would push forward, but they were not moving forward in a straight line. It was a mixture of wheeling maneuvers and obliques, in a sense, to gather right there. Believing that the Federal lines had been pushed back from a cannonade, which was 2 hours long, Lee told Longstreet, "General, you may move your troops forward." George Pickett comes up to James Longstreet. "Sir, may I move my troops forward?" Longstreet does not want to do this. He has not wanted to fight here at all. He did not want a fight to erupt here. He did not want to conduct the fight here. But Longstreet did not want to say anything. He lowered his head and just, with a single arm movement, said it all. "You may begin your assault." Not only did you have elements from the 1st Corps, but you also had A.P. Hill helping on the extreme left of the Confederate line of the 1st Corps. The 1st Corps was the group that got the furthest. Some of the elements of Virginia, which was under Armistead, Garnett, and Trimble, managed to breach the wall, specifically under Armistead. Armistead himself would be wounded as he would go over the wall, and he would be carried to the Spangler farm, where he would die later that week. Welcome back. We're on the last leg of our trip through Gettysburg. Right now, we're at the focal point of what was Pickett's Charge. Now, across the field from us, you see on that snowy white-capped hill, that's the Virginia Monument. That is where Lee is watching. Now, as I've said before, the terrain in front of you is not flat. There's dips, there's curves, there's little valleys and swells. Confederate troops could not see what was in front of them immediately, or if they did, they would go down and come back up. Preluding the assault, there was actually a 2-hour cannonade that had occurred from the Confederate lines. What the Confederate artillery thought they were hitting was along this line, along the angle. But in fact, they were overshooting. They were overshooting to the point where the line behind us, which is actually going to be Federal headquarters, was getting bombarded. To the point where General Meade himself has to fall back. And his command will actually be held on the Baltimore Pike. Now, imagine, if you will, hundreds of men from the Pennsylvania Brigade, the California Brigade, the 71st on our extreme left, the 72nd on my right, and the Pennsylvania Irish Brigade, the 69th Pennsylvania, to the right of the 72nd. Now, they're all laid down along the wall. During the day prior and the night of, Union troops ran out to the road, started collecting muskets, and laid them along the wall in the attempt to preserve ammunition on the next day. Pickett's men come from the woods in front of us. You also have the troops of 3rd Corps in this general area as well. They start pushing up, and as soon as they hit the Emmitsburg Pike, they come under small arms fire. The Philadelphia brigades are picking up their rifles, firing, dropping, picking up another. It is effectively almost like machine gun fire, rapid fire. Now, one prolific gentleman will become quite famous here, especially after the movie Gettysburg, which was filmed in 1992. Louis Armistead. Armistead is a brigade commander in Pickett's division of Longstreet's Corps. He has 5 regiments under his command, and he is coming up and over the Gettysburg Pike. He will scale the wall up over here. He will lead his troops over to Alonzo Cushing's battery, lay his hand on a cannon, and he is immediately shot. He is shot through the chest. Now, Armistead will be taken to the Spangler Farm, where he will die only a few days later. But there are also other notable wounded men on this battlefield as well. Winfield Scott Hancock, who is actually Armistead's friend from the old army in California in the days of the opening shots of the war in 1860 to 61. Hancock will be down toward a small wood line just over the rise here, and he will be shot through the groin. While he is mounted on his horse, the saddle will actually be hit by a mini ball, and that round will send a penny nail into his thigh, as well as multiple splinters from wood that is involved in making the saddle. He is carried off the field, and Armistead is only wounded a few hundred yards away. Quite an ironic turn of events. Now, it gets to the point where Confederate troops are overpowered. A lot are captured, many are killed or wounded. The walking wounded and those that were able to survive will actually break and run over the Gettysburg Pike, occasionally turning around to fire. However, this is not the end of the Battle of Gettysburg. Some wish it was. On the night of the 3rd, troops begin to gather their command together, and they will begin the retreat on July 4th. July 4th is a very sullen day. It is supposed to be a celebration of America. However, it is an America divided. In the South, in Mississippi, Vicksburg has fallen to Ulysses S. Grant. In Tennessee, William Stark Rosecrans will actually capture the city of Tullahoma, causing Braxton Bragg to retreat into Chattanooga, and will eventually begin the Chickamauga campaign. However, when Lee retreats from Gettysburg, he is retreating in a downpour. He realizes the dour mood of the Army of Northern Virginia and begins to realize, I cannot exist in this country. I must escape. So in the middle of July, he will actually manage to get down into Williamsport, Maryland, which is not too far away from Sharpsburg, and he will cross there. There will be a small action against Barksdale's Mississippians, now under the command of Andrew Humphreys. Barksdale's Mississippians will encounter Federal cavalry and infantry, and they will hold off long enough for the Confederate Army to cross the pontoons, and once the pontoons are crossed, the bridges are cut, and they flow freely down the river. Now, General Robert E. Lee has concluded the Gettysburg campaign. He is now back home in Virginia. The next prominent campaign to happen will actually be the Bristow Station campaign, which will kick off in late September and October.